Chapter 5. Consequences of offending me. Donald was startled by Fade's fierce eyes, but then he came to his senses in a quick while. He frowned and said with a sour tone, "I said you are a thief, an uncivilized bastard." Roar. With the roar, Fade became angry in an instant. Fade did not mind the insult, but for someone who had been an orphan since his childhood, he would never bear with anyone insulting his parents. Donald has crossed his borders. At this moment, Fade did not care about the consequences, he just wanted to teach this guy a lesson. Taking a step forward, Fade went in front of Donald in no time, and Fade swung his fist. Donald did not expect Fade to be so aggressive that he had no time to beware of Fade's fist. Thus, Donald was hit sharply in the face, and he fell to the ground with blood all over his face. Fade did not stop. Instead, he continued the fight. Fade's fists and kicks landed on Donald without any hesitation, sending Donald into screams and shout in pain. The pain from the beating made Donald wailed and shouted quickly for help. Security guard, what are you waiting for? Come and help me. Take this nut away quickly." All of a sudden, the security guard came to their senses and hurried forward to rescue Donald. However, the security guard did not expect Fade to be so fierce that the security guards were not his match. Donald was still being beaten up. His blood dripped down from his face.
Suddenly, a cold female voice was heard. "Stop, what are you doing?"
Trailing the source of the voice, everyone was shocked. They immediately bowed and whispered, "President Lin." Fade, who was in furious state, also gradually calmed down when he saw Quinn walking over to him. Finally, Fade stopped the beating. Donald covered his swollen cheeks and shouted wildly, "Come on, someone beat him to death."
"Shut up, all of you, come to my office," Quinn said coldly. Then she turned around and left.
Donald glared at Fade and followed Quinn. Fade looked back at Donald expressionless and was about to follow them.
Just as Fade was about to take his first step, Xenia came over and persuaded him in a soft voice. "President Lin doesn't favor the people who talk back to her. Don't be impulsive in front of her."
"I know. Thank you, Xenia." Fade smiled at Xenia and waved his hand before following Donald and Quinn. In the president office in the top floor,
Quinn's eyes swept across Donald's whole figure. When she saw Donald's bruises, she said, "Secretary Qin, you may deal with your wounds first."
When Donald heard this, a smile formed in his lips. Donald planned to get up and leave, but when he thought that Fade will be left alone with Quinn, he was afraid that Fade might tell Quinn the real story. Thinking of that, Donald decided not to leave. Instead, with a righteous look, he said, "President Lin, the matters of the company are more important. Let's solve the current problem first."
Hearing this, Quinn looked at Donald with a smile. Quinn nodded to Donald and said, "Then, Secretary Qin, take a sit and talked."
"Thank you, President Lin." Donald sat down and looked at Fade proudly.
Quinn then looked away from Donald and locked her gaze on Fade. A sudden drop in her tone. "Tell me what's going on."
Fade looked at the difference in Quinn's attitude in both of them. He felt disappointed.
"Why aren't you speaking? Weren't you very active downstairs?" Quinn said coldly.
The voice woke Fade from his thoughts. Fade looked up at Quinn and said, "I." However, before Fade could say anything, Donald, who was sitting on the side, suddenly spoke. "President Lin, speaking of this matter, it's actually my fault. I did not manage my staff well, and I did not solve the thief in the wisest way. Please punish me." This statement startled both Fade and Quinn. Fade immediately understood what was going on when he saw Quinn's expression changing. Donald knew that this matter would likely become a debate between both parties, and Quinn hated those who avoided responsibility the most. Therefore, Donald took the initiative to admit his mistake, portraying himself with someone with a high sense of responsibility. At the same time, Donald was also be able to put the name on thief to Fade. Fade had no choice but to admit that Donald was indeed the secretary of the president office. His survival skill in the workplace were indeed sinister. After thinking it through, Fade glared at Donald, and he tried to explain himself to Quinn.
However, it was obvious that this trick of Donald worked very well at Quinn. Donald's statement made Quinn relaxed and she looked at Donald. Secretary Kin, tell me what's going on.
Covering HIS wound, Donald frowned and sighed. Shaking HIS head gently, Donald said, President Quinn, it's actually not a big deal. In the afternoon, I heard there was a newcomer in the medical room, and HIS skill is good. As I didn't feel very well, I went to the medical room for treatment. However, I didn't expect that this newcomer, Mr. Chen, somehow seemed to have some misunderstanding with me and was not willing to diagnose me. At that time, I was agitated due to my illness, so I wanted to punish Mr. Chen for not doing HIS work properly. In the end, Mr. Chen was also agitated and even wanted to fight me. Of course I wouldn't fight him, so I called the security guard to stop him. When the security guard started to take action, one of them accidentally found some pills at Fade. I heard from Xenia who work at the medical room that those were imported pills, which were worth more than 10,000 yuans. Nonsense. I'll beat you to death. Fade was furious when he heard that Donald making false statement and hiding the truth.
Stop, Fade. Quinn frowned and shouted. The stare Quinn threw at Fade was filled with even more dissatisfaction. At this moment, Quinn slightly regretted her decision of casually finding this man to deal with the forced marriage.
At the same time, Fade looked at Quinn and thought of their relationship. Then Fade took a deep breath and tried hard to suppress the urge he felt to beat someone up. Fade explained, President Lin, the situation is definitely not what Donald had said. At that time,
However, as soon as he spoke, Quinn interrupted him coldly. I didn't ask to speak. I only want to ask you a question. Is what Secretary Kin said is true?
Fade shook HIS head and said, Of course not. Donald raised HIS eyebrows and interjected, How dare you say it's not true? Let me ask you, which of the scenarios I'm telling is not true, besides the imported pills have now has been confiscated from you, and this is strong evidence. Do you want to deny it? In the end, it is also true that you beaten me up, isn't it right? Those, I can explain. The matter. Fade glared at Donald and still tried to explain himself.
However, Quinn did not give him a chance, as she already seemed to be a little impatient. Quinn waved her hand to interrupt him and said coldly, Don't make excuses. You just need to answer me. Did what Secretary Quinn says really happened?
Looking at Quinn's cold eyes, Fade felt a sudden pain in HI's heart, and then the feeling of helplessness and sadness welled up in HI's heart. The anger and desire to fight in him disappeared in an instant. Fade's mouth twitched slightly and formed a bitter smile on HI's face. Fade then flashed a cynical evil smile and said, Since President Lin has already had an answer in your heart, then it doesn't matter what I have to say. My answer is yes.
Hearing this, disappointment flashed through Quinn's eyes, and it then turned in a formal look with a little coldness. Quinn said, Since you have admitted it, then there is nothing more to say. As you are a newcomer, I will not fire you to the time being. However, you must be severely punished. Your salary for 2 months will be deducted, and you shall make a self-review in front of all the staff in the next company meeting. After she finished her sentence, Quinn handed Fade a document and coldly said, This is the announcement for your punishment. You may have a look. If there's no objection, this cast is considered settled.
It doesn't matter, it's up to you. Without even looking at the documents, Fade turned around and walked towards the door of the office. At this particular moment, Fade had decided to leave. Although they were together, because of that incident, they were not from the same world after all. If this relationship continues, there will be more conflicts. If this was the case, it was better leave. As for Ice Lotus, he did not actually care that much for the Ice Lotus at this moment.
Quinn looked at Fade's attitude and she immediately frowned with dissatisfaction. Quinn felt that her punishment was actually light for Fade. If it wasn't for the special relationship between them, Quinn would have dismissed him. Now, Fade seemed to be dissatisfied with the punishment. This guy. A sense of disappointment surged in Quinn's heart. Waving her hand, Quinn said, You may leave now.
Fade did not say anything and turned around to walk out the office. Donald, as this moment was full of arrogance and pride, as if he had won the battle.
Suddenly there was knock on the door, and woman's voice was heard. President Lin, this was Lily. I have something important to be reported to you. Lily. Quinn paused for a moment. Apparently, she was not expecting Lily to come at this hours. After a short pause, Quinn said, "Come in, Lily."
Thanks for watching and reading. The other chapter of this novel is at the description. Next chapter will be uploaded. Please like and subscribe for more incoming novel videos. Thank you.